If you're joining from Millie and Nick's Instagram, my name is Danielle on Openly Committed on TikTok and Instagram. And I am in a non-monogamous hierarchical marriage. And we're going to be chatting about it today. So let me know if you heard that. If you're like, oh, what's the girl in green?
So people on Instagram, did you hear Danielle? Oh, they can hear it. Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, okay, great.
Awesome. So I'm going to start by doing a land acknowledgement as Rich comes on. So I'm Millie, and me and Nick are doing this live from Toronto, and Danielle and Rich are in the States. We're all on Turtle Island. We are in the traditional territory of the Mississauga of New Credit. And before colonization, the people of this land did not either have compulsive monogamy or hierarchy. This land had a different culture. So as we're here on learning compulsive monogamy culture, let's also remember, to also challenge the hierarchical culture that harmed the original people of this land.
And I'm Nick. So I've been in a polyamorous relationship with Millie for 13 years. I also have another partner that I've been in a relationship for 2 years. She has children. And this whole kind of, it's like decolonizing a little project, as Millie kind of explained a little earlier for those that just joined, started from an offshoot of a workshop that Millie did 2 years ago?
A little bit longer, like 3-4 years ago.
About 3-4 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and that workshop was Decolonizing Love. And I've always been polyamorous. I am from the Nandi, Darubu, Maasai, and Kikuyu tribes of Kenya.
So that's us.
Yes, that's us.
And then
I'm Danielle. I'm going to give the intro for my husband as well. My husband and I have been in a non-monogamous relationship for 13 years. We actually opened up only a few months into dating, and neither of us had been in a non-monogamous relationship before. We had always only ever been monogamous until he and I met. And so we spent 2 years researching, figuring out rules, reading books, talking to a lot of people, figuring out how we were going to structure our relationship in a way that would give us the best life together and also allow us to have experiences, emotions with other people. And so now, only a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, it turns out, I started this TikTok account. And I'm so thankful and grateful that I've been able to talk to hundreds and hundreds of people in that process. And I am in the moment writing a book about non-monogamy. And I've got some really exciting information and updates on the book that I can't share yet because I've got paperwork to sign, but I'll be able to share soon because there's just not enough literature on the market when it comes to polyamory in general.
Absolutely agree with that. I think it's one of the things I think is exciting about this particular debate is the fact that you and Rich have been together 13 years, and so have we. We've been together 13 years.
I know, I was thinking that too.
Yes, you have children, and Nick's other partner has 2 children. So I think it's a very level debate on, between egalitarian polyamory and hierarchical polyamory because we both have embodied experience over the same amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And there's not a lot of, in general, there's just not a lot of people that have been practicing non-monogamy and polyamory for 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure you get these comments on your, in your account, it's like polyamorous couples don't last, come see me in talk to me in X amount of years or whatever. Like we get that a lot.
All the time.
And then we're like, well, we've been together for 13 years. So I don't know. You want to wait another 20? It's like.
Yeah. And I've always been polyamorous. I've never, ever been monogamous. So,
So I'm seeing a couple questions on my end, guys. What is the debate about? And guys, my husband is battling Netflix. So my husband has both kids. He's in North Carolina right now, and he just fed them dinner. He's putting them in front of a movie so that he can come and join the debate. So he is about to jump on. We promise. I know everyone's like, "Where's her husband?" We just followed him. Where'd he go? Like, where is this guy? Guys, the debate is about ethical non-monogamy and ethical hierarchy, or maybe a better way to put it is, can a hierarchical relationship be ethical?
Yeah.
And so that is really what we're going to be chatting about primarily today. Nick, if you want to walk through the structure, that would be awesome. But we are going to have a lot of time for questions.
So we're gonna try to make this within an hour, but we're leaving. We want to make this as interactive as possible for everyone as well. We want all of you to be part of this discussion. So we went through introductions. We're going to, maybe let's just, put in the chat, everybody. It's where does everybody stand? Maybe, put in the chat.
Yeah.
It's like, what's your stance right now? Or maybe I can do a poll. Hold on.
Yes,
wait.
I'm doing a poll. I'm not sure you guys can. Let me know if you guys can see it. Can an E&M hierarchical relationship be ethical? So I just launched that poll.
Okay.
If you're able to, are the decolonizing love? Are you guys able to see it as well?
I just made a quick poll. So put a big smiley face if wait big smiley face if you think it's okay. Big sad face if you think it's unethical hierarchy. So smiley face if you think it's okay, sad face if you think it is unethical.
You know what would have been interesting would have been to like being able to make a poll at the beginning and then at the end as well do it again.
That's what we're gonna do. That's what we're gonna do. So right now we're just doing kind of the poll right now, and then after we'll do the same poll to see where everybody stands. So in terms of the structure, yeah, go ahead.
And anyone that's following on my side, because I have a text poll that's going where you can actually answer yes or no. And I have already seen a whole bunch of commenters saying like, oh, it's not ethical or unethical. It's amoral. So we're going to have a whole bunch of things. These are exactly the kinds of things that we are going to address today. Nick, you want to walk us through the structure?
Okay, so structure. So we're going to first, go over and defining what ethical is, So we're talking about, is it ethical or not? Let's define everything. Let's define what ethical is. We're then going to go into, defining what hierarchical polyamory is. Really, make sure we're on the same page on what that is. Then we're going to go into discussions about veto power. I know you and Rich have a veto. And then we're going to go into defining what couple privilege is and really, connecting the nuance with hierarchical polyamory. And then after, we're just going to, these last few questions for each other it's for us to ask Danielle and Rich, and for Danielle and Rich to ask us. And then we're going to go over, what we learned from the debate. And then we're going to do a poll again, and then questions from the audience. But we're not just saving the questions for the audience. After each section, we're going to field or screen for one question from each of our sides that we're going to answer. So please wait until the end of each section. Keep the question really on target to what we're talking about and not some random. So when we're talking about, for example, hierarchical polyamory and defining it, please keep your questions on that specifically. And then we're going to answer a few questions there and then move on to the next round, next pillar.
Next round.
Yes. Okay. So still waiting on Rich right now. So let's get into defining ethical. So I think let's start with you, Danielle. How would you define what is ethical?
It's ethical.
I'm gonna have you guys go first because I'm gonna still work on some tech stuff here for a second.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so we define ethical or ethics really, ethics, it's really knowing about, what is right and wrong. And there's a few people that think that there is ethical relativism, and there are a few people that believe that there are certain morals and ethics that are universal. A lot of the definition of ethics revolves around a few pillars. 1, honesty. Number 2, fairness. 3, respect. 4, responsibility. And that you take into account the well-being of all those involved. And so some of the questions to ask yourself are, it's like, do my actions, respect the rights of others? Does it cause harm? Does it benefit one over the other unfairly? Am I being responsible for the emotional needs of all those involved? And that specific question is really, with hello, Rich, with regards to a relationship specifically. So based on that definition, we want to know whether both of you agree with this definition and whether there's an amendment to this definition, because I think it's really important that we agree on what's ethical, because if we don't, this debate is going to be all about, well, I don't think that's ethical, but I do think that's ethical. It's having an agreement on a definition on what is ethical would be a good starting point there.
Yeah, Nick, can you repeat your 5 one more time?
Yeah. So it's respect for others, honesty, fairness, responsibility, and that the well-being of all are taken into account.
Yeah, I mean, I would generally agree with those. I've never laid it out in all 5. I feel like at the end of the day, with when I think of ethics, I really focus more on the honest one in terms of ethics and making sure that all people are treated. I know you used the word fair, and fair is kind of a difficult word on this regard. But I guess in my head, yeah, I will go so far as to agree. Yeah, I agree with those 5. Richard, are there any that you would want to add or kind of edit in that list?
I think that. So I think that you're right, Danielle. So I think there's going to be nuances in what we consider the true sort of manifestation of these values, and I think that's probably where we're going to disagree. I think what's going to happen is we will disagree about what is fair. We will disagree about what we're willing to sacrifice for the sake of the well-being of others. And I think that's probably where we will hash things out. But I think I would hope that pretty much every normal, socially competent person would have some version of these 5 things. I would agree very broadly that it's correct. But I think we will probably disagree on the nuances.
I really like your point about well, when you said that that sometimes you're going to have to sacrifice something. So I assume that's like a more of a utilitarianist approach, right? You're looking for the overall well-being, like the consequence, but you're going to have to make sacrifices in order to ensure that in the end the overall well-being is good.
I think the overall well-being, but also just circumstantial. I mean, bring it back into like in non-monogamous relationships. If one person is going through something really substantial, the death of a family member, where they need additional emotional support, I don't want to bring up examples right away. Maybe it's not a good idea to bring up examples right away, but like I think that there's just nuances in the situation. Resources are scarce. Time, energy is a limited resource, and when you're talking about, are we looking at the collective whole of everyone being treated ethically? I think there are nuances in certain circumstances where people are going to need more, and things are just going to be changing as people's needs and wants in individual moments change.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely agree with you. And so I think if we, during our discussion, if we constantly go back to these 5 pillars and, we can debate, and like Rich said, it's maybe there's a little nuances to these specific pillars, but, if we go back to them and really, determine what is fair, what is honest, what is, what is being responsible throughout the debate and use these words, I think that'll really, make us understand each other a lot more.
Oh man, I wish, Nick, that I had your Google Doc, the Google Doc that you made in front of me, but my computer has my husband on it.
Yeah. So
I lost my notes. I lost all my notes by having.
So let's let's say so let's just go to people on TikTok and Instagram, see if there's any questions or comments on your side, Danielle, and we'll just look on our side and see if we can bring that into this.
I think the first question I just got here, maybe we'll just have this is a refresher, is what type of relationships are we in? And so to answer the first question, this is my husband. I'm Danielle, and my husband and I are in a open hierarchical marriage. We've been together for 13 years. We've been non-monogamous that entire time. We think of each other as one another's primaries, but we also have relationships outside of our marriage that we would consider to be really beautiful, special, wonderful relationships. We've both had, in my case, boyfriends and girlfriends, in his case, girlfriend, that were really important, wonderful people in our lives. But at the end of the day, we would define our relationship as a hierarchical, non-monogamous relationship.
We prioritize our relationship over basically anything else.
Yeah, and our children. So we also have 2 kids.
Okay. And then I really liked, the bratty cat kind of said, also, are we honoring, what makes us human?
Yes, I thought that was a very amazing thing to talk about.
It's a beautiful question.
Yeah, when we define ethicality, are we also honoring what's as human? So a lot of people have said is to, what is our definition of hierarchy, which I think
that leads us to the second. Are we okay to move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, great. So, really, it's the second kind of, the discussion point is to define hierarchical polyamory.
Yeah. Before
that, go on, Millie.
Before that, can we define what is polyamory and what is hierarchy before we define what is hierarchical polyamory? So we answered what our definition of ethics are. Could you please give your definition of what polyamory is and what's your definition of hierarchy?
Yeah, sure. And so I just got a ton of questions right now asking. So this is Millie and Nick and Decolonizing Love. And would you guys consider yourself relationship anarchists, or just how would you define your hierarchy in your relationship?
No hierarchy.
No hierarchy. She's a relationship anarchist. I'm just polyamorous. There's a little bit of a difference, but I'm a non-hierarchical polyamorous.
Yeah, so we practice egalitarian polyamory. I'm a relationship anarchist, and that is somebody who does not prioritize romantic relationships over platonic or familial relationships, but also I come in from an anarchist political background. I am an activist, and activism does inform my polyamory practice.
So to answer the question, my definition of hierarchy, and I think you guys can probably hear in the chat already see that there's going to be a lot of differences, and how we identify ourselves. So my definition of polyamory, and I get this question a lot, is like, what's the difference between ethical non-monogamy and polyamory? Or what's the difference between open and polyamory? I think it is as simple as, and most people in polyamorous relationships are looking for emotional connection with the people that they are intimate with, and having kind of emotional relationships, and multiple emotional relationships. And polyamory is many loves. And then I often use the term open to describe our relationship, because sometimes we're polyamorous and we'll have, other people that we consider to be a boyfriend or girlfriend, but there's also times where I might have someone who's a friends with benefits, or someone who is, the problem is there's not enough terms to define it. And I think the types of love that we can have in an open relationship are really beautiful and really fluid.
We are also, Danielle, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We are also nowhere near as deep down the rabbit hole into polyamory as a lot of the people who like yourselves, and people who are part of the polyamorous community. Our relationships have always been more casual, and less like we've never had the goal, and we have never had relationships that felt close to equal to
ours,
the importance of our own marriage.
That's a fair statement.
And the bulk of our openness over the last 13 years has been casual dating. There's been a few exceptions to that, but the bulk of it has been pretty casual.
Yeah, and I think with casual, one of the things one of the things that helps a lot of people in the lives is, so I had 2 boyfriends for about a year each. My husband had a girlfriend for over a year, almost 2 years. And so we say casual, but we really consider these to be very valuable relationships in our lives. But that boyfriend or girlfriend relationship did not come close to being equal with our marriage. And so I think that is one of the things that puts us in a category of a hierarchical relationship.
Yeah. But then again, like, I wonder if that's happenstance or it's because you're making it that way. And, it's like you're not allowing them to get there. But I want to go back to just the term ethical.
Yes.
What?
Are we? That's it. I don't think.
Absolutely. I would say not allowing.
Yeah.
Certainly on my side.
Yeah.
My priority in marriage and my family on that.
Yeah. And
this is where we'll disagree.
Where will
to
we
answer
disagree?
your question on hierarchy, sorry, yeah. Go ahead, Nick.
Where will we disagree? It's where like it's okay for you not to allow it. Is that what you're saying?
Oh no, I think the allowing versus not allowing is where we'll disagree.
Yes, I would say that I absolutely avoid allowing relationships or seeking relationships that would have any kind of negative impact on my marriage and or my family. And my priority, my personal priority, is to Danielle and to my kids. That's like how I orient my whole life. And so that to me means prioritizing the family and the relationship. And I would be very hesitant to let somebody come in anything close to like giving them the sense that they might become equal.
So when you say negatively impact my marriage, what do you think is going to happen? Like what define, or, can you come up with circumstances that you think is going to negatively impact your marriage?
Well, I think so. If I was to bring someone into the relationship, into our family, who was considered an equal to Danielle, then that would be a significant reduction in the time I spend with Danielle. It would have a huge impact on how we think about our lives together. It would potentially put our kids in a more confusing situation growing up. It would just generally, like, I'm not saying it's totally impossible. I think it's very unlikely. And is it possible that one day we'll find a relationship that doesn't seem that it could possibly cause any kind of threat and can be totally equal? Maybe. Even then, Danielle and I have been together 13 years. I don't know really how you beat the sort of level of depth.
Rich, hold on. I want to just jump in really quickly because I think there's a difference between threatening and equal. Because you've had a relationship, a girlfriend who, you guys had a really long-term relationship. She came on vacations with us. I've never felt threatened by her in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. She did not want to be what it was from her perspective, a relationship escalator. She did at that time not want to live with a partner. She didn't want to have kids. She liked having a limited amount of time and energy that she was going to invest in a relationship, knowing that she still had like genuine feelings and you guys had a wonderful connection. And so I think that there was no threat there. And also she didn't want the equality in the relationship.
Okay.
And that was where she was at.
Clear with anyone I date that there's no chance of there's no chance of marriage or anything like seriously long term. That's not the way that I date.
Right. Based on how you're describing, Rich, like your intentions and everything, it seems to me that that's an open relationship.
Yeah, rather than polyamory.
And not polyamory at all. So that's okay.
But here's the thing is, how would you guys define polyamory? Because Rich fell in love with her. So like, how do you guys I want to hear how you guys define polyamory versus an open relationship.
Yeah. And you know what, like, I don't want to, claim how you feel, and I don't want to define how you feel. That's
just curious.
You. But from my perspective, that is not being loving at all. And your emotions are your own, and you define it. But let's define polyamory.
Sure. Because the way we define polyamory and why we wouldn't constitute that as a polyamorous relationship, because you already put in limitations on the ability of the love of your relationship to grow. And we define polyamory as the ability to love and be in a secure attachment, committed relationship with multiple people with the full knowledge and consent, informed, ongoing consent of everyone. That's our definition of polyamory.
And so it's really about.
I think I have a simpler definition, which is just to take the word, and it just sounds like being in, like loving multiple people, like romantically, like being in multiple loving relationships.
Yes, but what does love mean?
Probably very light version of polyamory in that sense, but it's but we might be wrong about the definition. Might be a more
define love. What does love mean? What does being in a loving somebody mean? Like, what are the tenets of loving somebody? Does it mean limiting them? Does it mean it's telling them no, I will like you're not as important? Just let's define love.
But I think that, okay, can you define love? I love some of my best friends. I love a ton of people in my life.
Yes.
I think one of the things if you're talking about limiting love, I don't believe you can limit love. I believe that you can limit time and energy and resources that you then utilize. And you can have boundaries, but I don't think you limit love. I don't think you can control loving emotions either.
Great. Yes, you can limit time, you can limit resources, absolutely. But when you're not allowing your relationship that you claim you love this person to evolve organically and naturally, you're saying, no, I'm only going to give you a certain amount of my emotions, and we're only going to allow this relationship to blossom up to this. I'm not going to let you get to that. How is that being in love with somebody?
Hold on, I feel like you're saying, but Nick, I feel like you're saying that the relationships have to evolve to a point where they're equal, and I feel like the relationships do evolve.
No. You are giving the autonomy of the relationship to evolve however way it needs to evolve. You're not saying it has to evolve the relationship escalator. It has to go to marriage. I have to have kids with you. No. You're basically creating an openness to say, I respect. It comes down to respect, like how are you respecting somebody fully and claiming you love them when you say that, it's like, I'm only going to love you in this way. And I'm going to restrict our relationship to this because somebody else is more important than you.
Yeah, but Rich, that doesn't feel like it does. I mean, so Nick, I hear what you're saying, but the thing is, as someone who's like living and breathing this, that's never what it feels like. I don't feel, so I've had my 2 boyfriends I genuinely cared about. I never felt like I was restricted in terms of where that relationship would have evolved to. Rich, if I would have still been dating the guy that I was dating after our daughter was born, and he and I were still together 5 years later, I mean, our relationship might look very differently. There was never a limit on where that relationship would go from our perspective. I think that, and I don't think that I limited you in any way in terms of your relationship with your last girlfriend and where it evolved to. I think most of it was really driven by her.
But Rich said he doesn't allow it. Rich,
I think it was driven by her, but it was also driven by me. I mean, we have a priority to each other and to our family, and those are our boundaries. And the boundaries are clearly stated from the onset. And just because they're boundaries doesn't mean it's impossible to respect somebody or love them. You just have your boundaries.
Don't confuse boundaries with rules. That's not a boundary. That's not a boundary.
So how would you define a boundary, Nick?
A boundary is you're protecting. You want to do it?
No, you can go.
Yeah, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, actually, this is the part that I feel like I do think give a better definition of boundaries. I was going to think about love, but I'll let you.
Yeah. Okay, so boundary is you're protecting yourself, okay? But you're not, whatever you set your boundary as, it should not affect a person that's not in your relationship, right? And when you state a boundary, you're basically saying, it's to protect yourself. And so if you're saying that's a boundary, Rich, what are you protecting yourself from? There's nothing to protect yourself. But that's a fear. That's a fear that somehow falling in love with somebody is going to hinder you're operating on a fear. Okay. But polyamory is about this openness, and you're operating on the assumption that somehow Danielle is going to get upset, is going to get jealous. And Danielle clearly doesn't look like that type. She looks like super open, loving, and everything.
Yeah.
But and super secure. Danielle looks super secure. And but you're operating on the fear that Danielle is going to tell you, Rich, I don't like this person, or it's like you're falling too much in love with this person, I'm going to get a divorce with you. Like you're operating like that.
But Nick, I don't think that that's fair at all. Hold on, sorry, 1 second. Nick, I don't think that's fair at all, because I also think one of the things that is important to note is that, and again, I feel like I feel like we're telling you we fell in love with people that we've been dating, and in your definitions that doesn't count as polyamorous. Okay, that's totally fine. From our perspective, I've never felt like the feelings that I had for other people were limited. I have not actually felt, Rich, in our case, and so maybe this is something that Rich and I don't agree with, that my relationship was in any way limited. I never felt like you limited my time with my boyfriends, where it could evolve to. I think that there was a natural evolution. Then I feel like those relationships evolved naturally, and I don't think I've ever limited you with your girlfriend. I mean, for crying out loud, we had conversations around what would happen if she moved in with us. We do not feel like we have limitations on where things go. However, when it comes to priority, and I will say, and I don't want to say this is a parenting thing, because I don't think it's.
Totally disagree on that.
I know we do disagree on this one. I do think one of the things is with the parenting thing that changes a little bit is that when we became parents, and Rich and I became parents 9 years ago, and so when we became parents, I think the commitment that I made to my children and to our family is a little bit different than the commitment I'm making to my husband and my partner. And in that sense, the family, the structure, the stability of my family will always come first. And I don't think it's coming from a place of fear. I think you were describing this as like, am I fearful? Am I setting a boundary out of fear? I don't actually feel like any of my boundaries are set out of fear. But I am protective of my family. I am always thinking about how am I making sure that my marriage and that my kids are provided for, and that I am doing everything in my power to make sure that they feel loved every single day, and that their lives are as stable as possible. And I think that when that happens, and it comes to like the other people that we let into our lives, we're more cautious about it. I don't want to use the word fearful, but we definitely have more conversations. We're more cautious. And it doesn't mean that we don't love them, especially because I think we often look for people that, like I said, are not looking for the relationship escalator, are also in non-hierarchical marriages. And those are more the people that we tend to date versus people that are looking for the marriage and kids, because that's not the boundary that we have set, is that is not something we are able to offer the people that we date.
Okay.
I just want to try to understand why you can't be egalitarian polyamorous and still be able to do all those things, protect your family, and love
How
people.
do you define? I had never heard egalitarian polyamory. There's so many terminologies. Okay, define egalitarian polyamory for me, because I heard it for the first time on your channel, like yesterday when I was like watching all your videos.
It's basically non-hierarchical polyamory.
It's basically, we don't have any rank order. So if you look at what hierarchical polyamory is, it's a rank order where a primary has decision-making and power abilities over those who rank below, secondaries and tertiary, whilst an egalitarian polyamory allows every relationship, there is no partner has decision-making capacity over other partners. And nobody ranks over the other partner. And every relationship is allowed to blossom and develop and be as it in the trajectory that it's going to, so there's no obstacles to it. And what else?
And there are benefits to this, right?
Sorry, Millie, Rich has some questions for you. Rich, sure. Go ahead. I'm going to turn you up.
Sure. Yeah, I just got a couple. This will help me understand where you're coming from with this. So imagine Nick is in a relationship with someone, and it all seems to be going fine.
Yeah.
And he's really happy, and they're in love. And she tells him, a year into the relationship or something, oh, I just went to the Trump rally, and I just had a great
Okay.
time. And I'm super excited about Trump running again in 2024.
All right.
I love it.
Would that
Okay.
have any say, and Nick, I know you probably won't agree with this, but let's say Nick just really loves her and is willing to put that aside, has no trouble putting that aside, and still wants to be close with her, still wants her to be part of your whole dynamic.
So that's a hilarious friggin' comment.
I love that question.
I mean, it's hilarious because it's so anti-Nick.
Wait. He hasn't finished talking. Sorry, what was that last thing you said, Rich? Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a difficult system we're using here. I was just saying it's a thought experiment. You don't need to comment on whether it's realistic or not. I presume it's not realistic.
I'm going to entertain it, and just, if Nick went into the deep end and the rabbit hole and managed and dated a Trump supporter.
MAGA supporter.
A MAGA supporter.
Yeah.
And he wanted to stay with her because he was blinded by love. I do not control Nick. I do not. I control, however, who I allow in my own personal space.
That's what a boundary is.
That's a boundary. Okay. So it be like, what the hell, Nick? I was going to answer this a second. Sorry, Rick?
What?
That is a boundary that you have based on a relationship that you are not part of.
Yeah. I would never.
But no, she doesn't control that other relationship, though.
I don't control who Nick dates. I don't control, and I don't tell Nick who he can date or etc. But what I can do is always control the energies and my own space. I can also question Nick as to his choices. I can also be like, so what's up with you dating, a person with that sort of political, do we still have the same value system? And I can also say, I do not want this person when I'm in my space, and I do not want to see this person. I don't want to talk to this person because of their politics. That I can do, but I will never tell him, you cannot date this person, I would never do that.
That's my decision to make. And, Millie can also, if I choose to continue, sorry.
If you date this person.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Is it working?
Rich and then Nick, because Nick had a counterpoint too. Sorry, Rich, continue yours and then.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you are saying is you are laying out boundaries and consequences with Nick, and you are saying, if you do this, I am going to leave, or there are going to be substantial consequences.
I didn't say that.
No, but
that's all that a monogamous couple does.
No, but she's just saying she doesn't want that person in her space.
Yeah.
Really, it would be
very clear. Look. It's no ultimatums. There's no ultimatums. If you do this, I'm going to do this. It's going to be like, you can do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. You have freedom. I'm going to, but please don't bring them to that house where I live. And she can also say, I don't want you talking about your other partner with me because I want to have our space. But Nick, by all means, you can go and do whatever you want. If I continue to date her, Millie can choose. What?
But so I think yes. Sorry, Rich. I think that was what we're trying to say is is that still egalitarian if Nick, you have a partner that you cannot bring to your own house because you and Millie share a house. And so if she has a boundary that says, I don't want this particular person in my space, but then that is limiting you from bringing a person that you date and you care about into your home. And so I think that we're trying to figure out, does that count as egalitarian? Because I think of that as hierarchical.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So let me just add on to that because it's actually kind of funny. You use a very extreme example, but we've actually had this happen in real life. Some of these examples where he has dated people who I have not aligned with, and I also have my other boundaries in my own house. For example, I had for a while no sex on our bed because I just don't want bodily fluids of other people on my bed. It's a hygiene thing. That is not
we do that too.
Yeah. Okay. That's not a hierarchy. When it comes to things like safety, hygiene, because I think mental health, my space. Because for example, in this example of the MAGA person, they could come when I'm not around. Because it's still his house. That would not be infringing on my mental health. But if I was around, then that would be like, yeah, you're infringing now on my own health.
You can't force people to be together that like don't get along. This is, yes, it's my house, but it's her house as well. Like she lives in this space.
Yeah.
So there were times where I brought people over and she wasn't there, and that's totally fine. And we've slept in the bed. That's totally fine. And so it's not limiting. I think, like if you choose to add other partners, I think you have a responsibility to really ensure that that there is some sort of freedom in that regard. And some people, what they do, and obviously this is a privileged thing, very privileged thing, is they get another apartment or they, get another house. These are a lot of, or like, like some might argue that, being solo polyamorous is like that true freedom. But again, Millie's not dictating how I live, how my love progresses with somebody.
And that's, I guess, is egalitarian polyamory, is that he's always got full autonomy and his relationships always have, they have agency. I don't tell my metas what to do, and I don't tell Nick what to do. I have control over myself and my boundaries over myself. And that's, where I also want mutual respect on my own boundaries. But in no way do I ever control Nick.
You would do the same thing if you have a roommate that a friend doesn't get along with a roommate. You're not going to cause that problem and, bring your friend over when your roommate doesn't get along with them. It's just common sense. Am I being hierarchical by doing that? No, you're just trying to, make sure that, it's like people are not upset and everybody's getting along. That's all.
But Millie is setting a limitation on your relationship. It might be a small one that is just like when your partner can come over and when she can't, but she is setting a limitation. Yeah.
If you're going to say that setting a limitation means hierarchy, I'm going to disagree, because we set limitations, for example, with condoms, right? We set limitations with, for example, and I'll give you the example of, condom use. It's like I will go and have a relationship and use condoms. If I choose, I can choose to not use condoms, but then I'm going to be using condoms with Millie because she's putting a boundary. She's going to be like, look, if you're going to be, fluid bonded with somebody else, I'm going to go. There's certain limitations. It's not hierarchy. It's about, protection of mental health. Yeah. And it's about, protection of hygiene or safety. Yeah. And so I wouldn't go down the route, or I wouldn't equate limitations to hierarchy. What we're saying hierarchy is again, a ranking order where you control another relationship that's not yours, and you disallow the organic growth of a loving relationship. That's really what hierarchy is.
Okay. But that's a lot to add into hierarchy, because I feel like this definition of hierarchy is much simpler. Hierarchy is a structure. At the end of the day, hierarchy in its purest form is a structure and a ranking granted for prioritization. You have hierarchy in friendships. You have hierarchy in family. You have hierarchy in the workplace where a manager is higher up than someone else, and that manager can still treat someone else ethically. Those are hierarchies. Like that is a hierarchy, because I think that Rich and I have a hierarchy, but I do not think we control each other either. Like, and so I think this is maybe one, like a semantics one, because I feel like the definition of hierarchy is pretty different in this regard. And I'm gonna
I don't think it's necessarily semantics, because when you look at the Merriam-Webster, because I did this right before this, you look at Merriam-Webster or you look at Cambridge Oxford Dictionary, the dictionary definition of the term hierarchy means is that it's a ranking order where somebody has authority over and power, where those on top over those on the bottom. That is the dictionary definition of the term.
So your best friend.
Your best friend is not a hierarchy, because your best friend has no ability, hopefully not, isn't telling you how to have other friends. Isn't limiting you and how you have your other friends. It's not a rank order because it carries no status with it over other people.
So I guess I have a question. So we're prioritizing a family unit, and it sounds pretty similar, and I'm getting this from Life with Alexa, prioritizing our family unit, and we consider that to be a hierarchy. But I honestly believe there's a lot of connections between Millie, the way that you described kind of your protection of your home and a fluid bonded space and kind of not allowing certain political views into a home. There's a protection of that home because it is your space. So I think I'm trying to figure out from your perspective, how is that different from our protecting of a family? It does sort of feel like we're splitting hairs. And actually, guys, here on a positive note, I'm getting a whole bunch of comments to me like, these guys are really similar. This is a good discussion, but I think it's semantics. So there's like a lot of so I think there's a lot of conversation here, and I don't know about you guys on my end, but I'm getting a lot of appreciation for this discussion. So even if we're not disagreeing, the number one takeaway is as providing these sort of thoughts and discussions for the group. And I have one question that I'm getting consistently to Millie and Nick, which is, do you want to have kids? And what about your relationship would change if you did have kids together?
Okay. So we still have a question mark on the kids thing. So that's a possibility. It's a maybe. We're still not sure about that. What would change if we had kids?
I don't think, I think it's really the thing. I'll give a difference on what a hierarchical relationship would do with kids and what a non-hierarchical relationship would do with the question of bringing up kids. So a hierarchical relationship, let's say, Millie and I are hierarchical. She's my primary, for example. And so we make the decision, hey, let's have kids. And then I don't have that discussion with any of my other partners.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't involve them in this discussion. And then after we make the decision and I get her pregnant, then I go to my other partners and say, hey, by the way, I'm getting a child. That is being very disrespectful. And that is not allowing for that openness and exchange. These people are my partners that are supposedly I'm in love with. So the non-hierarchical approach to that would be to let my other partners know what's going on right from the beginning. Hey, I'm thinking of having a child with Millie. We just started that discussion. How do you feel about that? It's like, how would you want this dynamic to change? What do you require? What do you need? What do you, for some of those partners, they might not want a child either, but others might want a child. And then that might open up a discussion about that and a negotiation about that. But you're allowing for that discussion to happen and you're giving them kind of like that opportunity to voice themselves. This is a democracy. This is not a dictatorship where it's me and Millie at the top and we're dictating it to the other partners. We're involving them in the discussion.
So how does that work then if you're having kids without your partner? Like, as a female in control of my body with the option of going to a sperm bank nowadays, I want to be a parent. So if I want to be a parent, but my partners in a polyamorous relationship don't want to be a parent, like, there is no hierarchy because then I'm just making this decision for myself. I have complete autonomy over my body. What happens in that situation if a partner doesn't want a child, but the person with autonomous control over the ability to get pregnant does? I mean, there's no hierarchy. It's just one person, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's not really a discussion if a woman wants to get pregnant and has the ability to do so scientifically.
I'm still trying to just understand, the question.
Yeah, what are you trying to say?
I think where I'm going with this, is when a person wants to have kids, or I'm not going to make any assumptions around people wanting to have kids, like, because I think sometimes it's accident, sometimes you're not entirely certain. But I think one of the things is that, like, I wanted to be a mom. And so making that decision that I want to be a mom. If I'm my question to you guys is, I decide I want to be a mom. If I'm in a non-hierarchical relationship, do I need to get approval from everyone that I'm dating in order to decide that I want to be a mom? I mean, this is, I feel like a lot of these decisions are autonomous, and hierarchy doesn't matter in those sorts of conversations.
I don't think you need approval. I try to involve, whenever major decisions I have, I try to involve all those people who I'm sharing a life with. So in terms of the children thing, so if I have children, I actually do want to have 3 children. And Nick is very much, he'd only want 1 child. So the way we've gone with this is that, he would get 1 child and I'll probably have 2 more children elsewhere. That's already something that might be one of my partners. I've been in long committed term relations with other people in the past before, and I've had that same conversation. I'd have 2 kids with you, 1 kid with you. or I would have kids, somewhere else. I'm also solo polyamorous. We might be nested for now, but that's due to capitalism and living in Toronto, a very expensive city where we have had no choice but to live together. But the aim in the future is for us to live in like a triplex with one partner on one floor, and other floors are other partners. And I would be a mom with my children, and their dads could be on different floors. So that's, so I still have very much autonomy, and I'm able to use with polyamory, be able to live in these very unconventional ways. I don't have to stick to this couple centric idea of how to have children.
One question on our Instagram, who is on the other end of this live with Decolonizing Love? So it's Openly Committed. You can find them on Instagram and on TikTok. Those are the other people. We have other.
Let's get back to our structure.
Yes. Okay, I feel like we've digressed a little bit, but good. It was a good discussion, anyways. So let's talk about veto power.
Yes.
It is our understanding, and correct us if we're wrong, that you have a veto up until the first date. Is that correct?
So our official veto, if we had to write out our rules for our relationship, is our number one rule is we're primary, we put each other first. And our second rule is that we have veto. So we theoretically have the ability to veto any person at any time for any reason. And I recognize that a lot of people hate that veto rule. It was having a veto rule, especially when Rich and I started this 13 years ago. We had a veto rule, and I think that that was important for us to establish safety and to feel like we could explore non-monogamy in a way that made us feel like we had a safety net and we were still putting each other first. Having said that, we've used the veto rule. We talked about this we've used it 5 times. The first 4 times we ever used it was the first year or so of our relationship, when we were kind of figuring out what made each other uncomfortable, what didn't, what types of people we didn't like. And the only times we vetoed in the early days were when someone was really disrespectful to us and was trying to break up our relationship. So that person was vetoed. Or I was insecure about someone and then I vetoed someone. So that was kind of how it was used early on. We haven't used a veto in years. And I think now we don't feel the need really to use a veto.
The rule is absolutely there.
But the rule's there. The rule is 100% there.
Danielle, you're so much nicer than me. You're explaining how we're so careful with this.
We do. Okay, you and I have talked. Okay, hold on. The priority is so I will say.
And my family, and that is it. And so for me, the veto rule is in full effect, but basically never needs to be.
Okay,
it's extremely rare.
The veto rule is in full effect, and Rich, you and I have talked about this. We do not feel like it is fair to anyone. When you had a girlfriend, we both talked about it. It would not be fair for me to veto her because you guys already had an established relationship, and that would be absolutely unfair for her in that situation to feel like I could veto her at any time.
Do you think that if either of us went to the other in a relationship and said, hey, I think that your boyfriend or girlfriend and your relationship with that person is seriously affecting our relationship and might hurt it long term, do you think that we would not respond to that?
I think we would respond to it as a conversation, but I don't think it is a power that either of us would use. I think it would be a discussion either with the two of us or with the other person as well involved. But I don't think it would just be like I'm setting down a veto rule. I don't think that's how you and I operate.
We don't operate in some excessively controlling way like that. But the bottom line is that there, certainly for me, there's a priority to my marriage and to my family, which I've said many times. If Danielle felt uncomfortable with the relationship that I was in, and this was having a substantial negative impact on our marriage, I would end that relationship 100%.
Really?
Every time.
Oh, God.
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay.
My priority is our marriage and our family.
Tell me how that's ethical.
Yes.
Tell me how that's ethical when we go back to fairness and responsibility for others, doing no harm. Tell me how that's ethical.
Yeah, but Nick, it hasn't happened. So we're
No,
talking about
but
is a theory
that
that's
doesn't matter.
ethical.
He has that
Yeah,
mentality.
but
How does that
isn't
Yeah, but it hasn't happened. It's not a reality.
but even
Well,
because how
absolutely.
how hurtful it must be for the people you're dating to even be told, even if you've never done it, you're still having this thing
like?
over them,
Yes,
telling them,
exactly.
"Hey, you're disposable. At any time my wife doesn't, like you, I will dump you." How is that to treat somebody like that?
That
How
is
are you okay
so.
with that? Like, I just can't believe.
So,
All right, how would you here on? Sorry, I want to get Rich closer. How would you respond to this one, Rich?
yeah, so the difference, I think, in our understanding, and we can maybe hash this out, it feels like it is an important part of our understanding, is that the kind of relationships you are talking about, it sounds like you are setting different, they have different kinds of expectations than the kind of relationships Danielle and I have. When Danielle and I get into a relationship, it is really, really clear to the people that we are dating that our priority is marriage and our family. That is super obvious right from the start and is very clearly communicated.
Yeah.
And so the people that, at least like I've dated in the past, have tended to be people who, for one reason or another, it was really important to them to have a relationship that was low-key, was casual, was not going to go on the relationship escalator. They wanted something that they knew would just be fun and casual and not go anywhere. And with the example, my last girlfriend, the reason why she felt that way is because she was coming out of an abusive relationship where the guy was super controlling, and she did not want a primary relationship. She did not want this super deep connection. She wanted something more casual that she knew would not become obsessive the way her previous relationship had become. And so those are the kinds of relationships we have. That sounds different from the kind of relationship that you're talking about, which is one that is hoping to become super deep and close and equal with the
and share kids, and have shared kids within the family.
We don't look for those relationships, and if people want them, then we are the wrong people for them.
Okay, I just two things. First off, to me, to even treat people who are just casual as disposable is also dehumanizing. They're
not disposable. No one that we date is disposable. That is something that I would never say about our partners.
Yeah, go.
Is that, anytime you can say that, what I mean by the term disposable is that when somebody else who you're not in a relation with feels differently about you, and then they are able to just, out of whim, just say, hey, I don't like this person, that it's never happened, but you said that is something that you would allow to happen. So in that case, you are already treating literally everybody you date as options. They're options, an option that your wife or your other partner, and it's on the table, it's there. And to me, it's not just about if you're in a committed relationship, that's the only time to treat people with respect. I think no matter what type of relationship you are in, whether, it's a hookup or whatever, everybody still deserves full respect and not to be treated as a disposable option. That to me is just inherently dehumanizing.
But Millie, I think that you're interpreting our description of the people that we date and making a little bit of a leap that I would not make, which is that we treat them as disposable. I mean, I never feel like that anyone that we've dated feels that they would never say that they felt disposable in any way. We have a veto power and we have a veto rule, but everything that we do is clearly discussed. We our communication, our transparency, not just with each other, but with the other people that we're dating. I mean, if a relationship ends, these are ongoing conversations with a lot of people. A disposable it would be, hey, Rich, go break up with her tomorrow, and then it ends. That's not how it works in actuality.
And
I don't think it's ever worked for anyone we've dated.
We're nice people, and we treat the people we care about.
I would say we're getting your story, but the people that you vetoed, I think, would have a very different opinion about you treating them well when they were vetoed. Usually a lot of comments we get from secondaries, a lot. I'm sure the primary couple thought they were treating them perfectly fine. But the thing is you never factor in the emotions and considerations of the other people other than your own relationship. And that is the dehumanizing part. We're hearing your
But
part,
that's not
your story,
true. That's
that
not
you treated
true.
them well, but we're not hearing them.
I mean, everybody who, you know, has
Yeah,
power
but guys, but that's not how we treat people.
You know, I think to me, when you know, you're depicting yourself, you know, you're saying like, you know, everybody was happy. Of course you would say that because you're in the power position. You know, everybody in power always sees, will view themselves as just. And to say that, you know, they were consented or to, you know, that they were happy, people in cults are happy. You know, people in cults consented to it, right? Like, I mean, you don't have autonomy. I think we can always say something is abusive just by looking. Sorry, I'm just going to finish this one sentence, guys. Is that I would still characterize this as unethical and abusive because at the end of the day, somebody doesn't have autonomy and just haven't got the full ability in the relationship to have agency because there's always, you have the ultimate power and the control. You have, that veto is always something on the table, right? That's the part where it's difficult.
Guys,
Right?
Imagine you have a close friend, and you're friends for like 2 years, and your friend comes to you and says, "Hey, actually, I'm really sexually attracted to you. I want to be in a relationship with you." Does that? They are not going. They have started the relationship one way with the friends. Now they want to take the relationship to a different definition, the same as what you're suggesting our partners in the past, you imagine may have wanted to do. And they cannot do that. And those boundaries were clearly outlined before. They're trying to change the boundaries, right? Okay. What is your obligation at that point?
I don't understand how that necessarily like matches this situation, but in, you know, let's say I have a friend who is attracted to me and wants to change and transition our relationship to something else. If I don't feel the same way, I'll be, you know, tell them I do not feel this, you know, the same way, and hopefully we can still remain friends. And if I find myself, oh, actually, you know what, I kind of want to explore this, then I would. But how does that apply to a conversation around boundaries and hierarchy? I'm sort of confused how that's applicable.
Based on what you want to do, based on your own boundaries, what you want to do with that relationship. They don't have agency in how they define their relationship with you. It's a negotiation with you.
Yes, exactly. There's a negotiation because, and you know, yeah, absolutely. And I do believe that, you know, healthy relationships, there's conversations, there's negotiations. There's no, hey, you know, Nick would be like, oh my God, that friend, you know, who's now hitting on you. I don't like that. You got to dump them now as a friend. You know, I'm uncomfortable. That doesn't happen because he never has veto power. Whilst in yours, apparently there is. So
if it was a threat, so maybe there's a different way to express veto power, which is to say that if it is posing any kind of risk or discomfort in the thing that is most important to me, which is my marriage and my family, then I would end the relationship if that seemed like the best way to solve that problem. The first thing my first priority is not this casual relationship and this casual dating that I have.
Okay.
And I think you guys have heard stories that maybe just aren't the same as ours. I think you imagine like there's lots of people who don't want deep committed relationships at that particular time in their lives, right?
Totally. Yeah.
I think. Hold on. Can I just speak to the veto rule really quickly? I almost wonder if Rich and I need a different version of the word veto, because I know you laugh at me on this one. When we used the veto early on in our relationship, I think that was an actual veto rule. That was a veto rule. And as you guys, I think, define it and have seen it negatively impact other people who are secondaries dating couples. When I think about veto now, Rich, I think that whatever you're going to use to define the term veto, you and I haven't used it in 8 years. if not longer, we haven't used this rule. Everything is a discussion and negotiation and something that we talk about. And you and I have talked about this, which is like, even at this point, we would never veto someone unless it was even before a first date, because we don't feel like it's fair for the person that we're dating to feel like their relationship could be cut off at any time because of somebody else's insecurities or just anybody else's decisions. You and I have had that discussion, and yet we still have a veto rule.
I would say that the way we conduct our relationships with others is entirely within the 5 pillars you laid out at the start.
I would agree with that, Nick. Yeah, I think that the way that we start, communicate relationships, have those relationships with other people, and end them are within those five pillars of being ethical.
Okay, so I would just propose this, and obviously it's just a proposal. It's your relationship, but I would just eliminate the veto completely. I'd be very cautious when you say that I would change how you describe the veto, because there could be sneakyarchy in there where you're just, it's like, changing it to another word, but it's really the same thing. So I would just eliminate the veto and come up with a process with both of you. If you have concerns, it's always okay to talk to your wife or husband, your partner about it, approach it, but don't let them make the decision. Both of you have that trust for 13 years that you are in love, you respect each other, you know each other are going to make very sound decisions. If one comes up with a concern, you know that the partner is going to really take in that concern and really value that concern, but really make it a point that I'm not going to tell you to leave that relationship. I'm just going to tell you my concern, and then what you do with it, it's up to you. And really keep it like that, and just eliminate the veto altogether. I feel this veto is like a crutch. It's like this safety net that you're keeping there just to feel secure. But that's that's a you thing. That's an internal thing.
Yeah,
I
think you guys are way more hung up on the veto than we are, because Nick, everything you just described, we do. Everything you just described in terms of how to have the conversations, we do.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm just going to ask Rich a few questions, right? Because I do sense a lot of fear-based approach to your relationship. And I just want to know, this imagined threat that could occur, what does it look like? What do you imagine would happen that you'd have to veto, you'd have to cancel, because you repeat that a lot. And can you give an example of a scenario where you think, there'd be such a threat to your relation that you need to do that?
Yeah, I asked them that too.
I think if somebody is having any kind of a hyper negative or destructive effect on our family, I think that would be something.
But how?
Yeah, can you
specific?
Flesh it out a little bit? Because
if they're upsetting me, if the consequence of them being in our lives is that Danielle and I are substantially less close and less connected.
Okay. Okay. So I wonder whether you could communicate and do other things.
Millie, I'm not sure we know what that looks like. I think one of the things is we don't know what would be really threatening to our relationship. It's so hard for us to imagine anything threatening us. But I think what happens when you put in our case, I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but in our case, when we say we put our family first, we also want to have a mechanism in effect in case something along those lines happens. I don't feel threatened. I genuinely don't think anything would break us up. I'm pretty sure our relationship could get through anything, and we want each other to live our happiest lives, and that includes being with other people. But my family, my 2 kids and my husband, those 2 kids that I put on this earth, I want to make sure that if anything threatens, and that includes Rich, not to get freaky right now, but if Rich was a threat to my children, if my parents were a threat to my, if people, I don't think you can predict what could come up and threaten the 2 most precious humans in my life. And honestly, I think the veto is a little bit, but at the same time, we open ourselves up to threats because we are letting a lot more people into our lives because we're constantly dating. Yeah. Now we're public figures on TikTok. Yeah. I think having a system in place that puts our children and protects our children is important to us. Mm-hmm. And a veto is kind of the current system. Is where my head's at.
Okay. Do we want to go to questions?
I just want to say that, because I instead of veto, because I always feel like there's no necessity when there's trust, when there's communication. Those things will solve those issues. If let's say for example we did have children, or we were having a problem in our relationship where his other partner was, I had less time, and because we've definitely had times when he's had other partners and we weren't spending much time, we weren't getting as close as we used to be. And all I did was talk to him and be like, hey, we're not having as much closeness as we used to as when we're just the two of us. And I missed that. And he'd be like, okay, let's figure out ways without having to like let go of this person to work on that. There was never a necessity for us to for him, to just leave and abandon a relationship that he'd been nurturing and somebody had been, given themselves to him. It was like, we focus on us and we go back to being close and, manage to like navigate that within our polyamorous relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I just, I feel like when there's great communication and there's a willingness to work, there's no need for vetoes.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah, I think Millie, as Rich just said, like we completely agree that communication is really all it takes. And that's also why we haven't needed to use a veto, is because everything that you're describing is exactly what we would do in that situation as well.
Okay.
My priority is and I think this is a difference. My priority is absolutely our relationship and our family. And I am totally comfortable putting in safety nets for that. And if things do get bad down the road, having the more tools we have at our disposal to save that marriage, the better, from my perspective. I think it's really important.
Hey guys,
my life towards the marriage.
Guys, it's already 5:30. I have a ton of questions for you guys on my end. Should we take a moment and ask some questions? Maybe we might need to skip the couple privilege section or save it for a future debate.
I think that
I'm good. I don't know.
Are you good with that?
Because the thing is, we also started really late because we were like waiting for so much. So I don't think it's bad because
But they do have questions for us.
Yeah.
Do we want to field just one or two questions?
Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have a 5:45 that I need to end.
Okay. So let's.
Darn. So we're gonna. Guess how much more time we have left?
I think, guys. All right, everyone. So if everyone thinks we need to do this again, give us a whole bunch of hearts. And I think, and we'll say so. All right, let's see. We've got. Do you guys have questions for us on your end? And I'm gonna find some questions in my comments for you guys.
Yes. We're gonna look for questions on here.
I just wanted to make the comment actually on for Rich, and then field some questions because Rich said that the more tools you have in his disposal to keep his family safe, the more safe that he feels. And that it's kind of funny because you're talking from America, this country that's such a militant country that uses because to me that's what in my head I was thinking about having lots of weapons and not really like working on your peacekeeping skills just doesn't actually make you safe. All you have is like a gun culture that actually creates a more violence. So I think sometimes looking at the hammer, a hammer will always look for a nail. I think it's more important to work on things like communication. That is actually your best things for peace, for emotional regulation that is going to keep your family much more safe than a veto. Veto is a weapon to me.
He's Canadian, right?
Yeah, I know, but you're in America, so
you're living in America.
I don't know which American,
but I know Rich is one of us, Canadian. Yes, I know.
I'm the only American.
Yeah.
3 generations in the end. I think just the more tools in your toolbox, the better. These are mutually exclusive. You can work on one and the other at the same time. The more tools, the better, from my perspective.
Yeah. We're just looking for any questions. It's really hard to go through.
Okay.
So I have a couple with you guys. So I have a question come in, which was, do you feel like that it's okay if a couple decides what's ethical for themselves? Or do you feel like couples who are polyamorous have to be non-monogamous? And is that prescriptive? Is the question I got here.
You mean have to be non-hierarchical, right?
Yeah.
Non-hierarchical, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
So can we ask them if they believe, people can decide what's ethical for themselves if everyone involved agrees?
No.
Start with that one.
No.
Go for that one?
No. Like I said, I think it's a slippery slope if we start to say that ethics and morals are relative, because I could be abusing somebody and that harms the other person, and I can say, well, I think it's ethical. That's a very slippery slope, and I think if we leave it up to, I think that in ethics there are very clear universal morals in ethics. There's some relativist ones, and I think that a lot of philosophers are trying to find a way to make it universal. But the very universal ones is do no harm, don't traumatize another person, respect, honesty, everything that we've said at the beginning and we've defined as ethics. I think this is something that everybody can agree with and can line up behind. And so I think that
you are following those ideals with your approach to this.
I'm sorry?
I mean, you disagree, but I don't think you're following those ethical ideals in how you guys talk about this.
Why is that?
Because you're making presumptions about what consenting adults want, and you're suggesting that they should not do things that consenting adults are saying they would like to do. And it kind of reminds me of the way people talk to Danielle about being open, thinking that she doesn't really want to be open, and she would never choose to be open unless like she'd been stuck with me, like asking her for it. Like I think consent is a key foundation of ethics, and you guys are suggesting we should override people's consent. Even with everyone consenting, we should still not do it because of your opinions on what it might become, or what it might be under the surface.
Yeah. I mean, we've had comments like that on our videos as well, so we can definitely answer that.
So consent is not a basis for something to be ethical. It does not make something ethical. Somebody, for example, there could be a cannibal out there, and he's looking for somebody to consently give him a finger to eat. We have rules in place to ensure that doesn't happen despite consent for a reason, because that is still harmful and violent behavior. People consent to being cults. People consent and claim themselves to be happy.
To be in a relationship with somebody 40 years older.
Consent is the bare minimum. Consent is not the, standard for the only thing being ethical. So, and also when we talk about consent also has something to be good consensual practice. It also has to be ongoing and informed. So in this case, you have a secondary. Polyamory is a pretty new relationship orientation with very few models of good practice. So a lot of people don't even know sometimes the rights or how to do things properly. So you're having somebody coming in saying, oh yeah, sure, I think I can be a secondary. They're not entirely, have complete informed consent, because they themselves are, pretty inexperienced, unaware, and people who they're probably dating might be new polyamory. And it's the same way. Consent is an ongoing thing. Is that there will be situations that come up and you not even envisioned, and you probably have never informed them that, hey, when this happens, this is how I may react, because you are reacting, over time, and nobody really actually consents to being, vetoed. I know very few times where hierarchical polyamorous people have ever told the person they're dating, hey, you might be really in love with me, but if my partner gets threatened, I will dump you. People are rarely told that at the onset of their relationship. So consent in a hierarchical relationship, it never really truly happens, because it's not informed, it's not ongoing, and they're not even told all the scenarios that are going to happen beforehand.
But that to me feels like a leap, to say that people in a consenting relationship where we have laid out, these are our boundaries, this is how our structure works. Does this work with what you want and what your needs are and how your relationship currently works? I mean, I don't feel like the cannibalism, for example, is a fair, and consent and cults are a fair comparison in this regard, because we are talking about two people entering into a relationship, whether with one or with two other people. And when people agree on the rules, have talked about boundaries, have good deep communication, are figuring out ways to make themselves happy, to make their partners happy, have all their wants and needs met, that feels in most ways, in my case, very ethical. And
I have another thought experiment.
So guys, we have 15 minutes, and I do want to make sure we answer everyone's questions, because I know you guys have questions on your end too, right?
Yeah. So, I'm gonna just rebuttal what you just said about, that, you never said about the portion about consent being ongoing. Because somebody can say is that, you told them this rule, etc. But it's like, for example, when people are having sex and somebody can consent, oh, we're gonna have it this way, it's gonna happen. But in the middle that they decide that they don't want it, but if you tell them, oh, well, but you consented, we must continue, it must stop. And it's the same thing that goes in a secondary relationship. If somebody may have consented to be in a secondary, but then they're like, hey, this is not really fair. I don't actually like this. Can I negotiate? Then you tell them, nope, you consented. That's also unfair. That's not ongoing.
I think consent is ongoing. I think consent is always ongoing because it's all conversation.
But
yeah.
Okay, can you imagine this? If Danielle and I met a family just like ours, it was a husband and wife, they were open, they had 2 kids, and I was attracted to the wife and Danielle was attracted to the husband. And they said, hey, we have a priority over our marriage and our family, but we're attracted to you and we'd like to date. Is that unethical to you guys?
You're swingers, or you're an open marriage. You're not polyamorous.
Why?
Even if we're not falling in love, but still keeping it casual, but we're all
that's
prioritizing our families and marriages?
So from your definition, it's open, but it's not polyamorous. So even if we fall in love with them, it doesn't count.
But it's not, again, going back to the point, is it really falling in love? And I think that people that are hierarchical are more likely to accept hierarchy from somebody else as well. It's kind of like, it's like if you work in a very hierarchical, company, you're more likely to accept abuse from a boss or a higher up because that's all you know, and you accept this, and you're also hierarchical with the people below you. So you're accepting the hierarchy from the people above you because you're hierarchical with the people, below you. It's just you're within that system. You're accepting that, so you're going to accept to be a secondary. And so, but you're speaking from a place where you've never been just dumped for nothing because somebody else just felt uncomfortable about you.
Well, then, but right now we're talking about.
You don't know the pain.
Nick, let's go back to the question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Let's go back to the question though, because the two people in a married relationship dating another couple in a married relationship, and if those 2 people they're hierarchical because they say they're still going to keep their married partners, and they fall in love. How is that not polyamorous? And I guess my other question is, so you don't define that as polyamorous, but do most people define that as polyamorous? That's never been what I hear is the definition of polyamorous.
My question is, how is that falling in love? That's my question. How is that falling in love when you're like you love your kids? You have, you love, and if you have multiple kids, you love both of them equally. That's the purest form of love. That's falling in love. That is what love is supposed to be. You love your both parents. You love them equally. You don't prioritize one over. That's what love is supposed to be in its purest form. Love is not about ranking. And that's why I'm saying, is that really love? Because when you're ranking people, that is not what love is.
But Nick, this is your definition of love. Most people would completely disagree with this and say that monogamy is right and you can only love one person. So I guess my next question is, I mean, it sounds like we're disagreeing on terminology, but I don't.
But you think we should stop?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Do you think that what we're doing is wrong?
Disagreement over terminology. You guys think what we should stop wrong.
Yeah.
We don't feel that way about you.
Okay.
And what I think, to me at least, we were always going to disagree, but I think you're failing to show why this is so bad that people should not be allowed to do it. That consenting adults should not be allowed.
Let's talk about, what people should or shouldn't do, because we don't have that sort of power, and we do not want to be out there forcing people to tell them you can't be in this hierarchical relationship. What we can do is teach people about good practices and encourage people to treat others well which is what we're
Exactly.
doing. We're not here telling you, Danielle and Rich, you guys need to stop doing this, blah, blah. What we can say is that we encourage you to respect how you treat your secondaries. Would you like to be in that situation where somebody could veto you? How would you feel? And to also make you introspect, is it necessary to protect your family when you can have honest, conversations, you can have communication, you already have trust, you have love, you have all these things that should be giving you security. Why are you still so insecure? And you do need this weapon, this veto thing. Why can't you can still, be able to keep a relationship secure, but treat people in humane ways. It's more that nobody deserves to be ranked as a secondary and have secondary treatment. And that is more what we're saying,
Yes.
We're not saying it might be love, but one of the reasons why we question whether it's polyamory, because you've already said that you've only ever have casual relationships. So I wonder to what, whether you're swingers, at one point, will you actually want to be in a committed relationship? Because to me, it's only polyamory when you're able to have committed love-in relationship with multiple people.
Yes,
when it's only sex-based, that's swingers.
But Millie, without knowing our relationships, you're saying they're not committed or loving. But Millie, without knowing our relationships, you are saying to us, based on our structure, that our relationships that we have with other people are not committed or loving.
No. We never said it.
You said
Rich said it.
Rich said that your all your relationships only ever been casual.
Rich is the one that said it. We're using Rich's
and
words.
I said that we've both loved those people. So I guess
you can
we've both fallen in love with people that we've dated, and according to
okay, let me just instead of me just arguing back and forth, have you been in any multiple relationships, within the 13 years where you're committed to multiple people?
Not in the same way that I was committed to my husband. I consider myself committed. I consider myself that I loved them. I discussed certain expectations together in terms of how often we'd meet, what we would do together, and what we'd talk. And it was a really valuable, wonderful relationship. But it wasn't the same level of commitment that I have to my husband. But that doesn't mean it wasn't committed. Like, I don't think my relationships aren't.
Yeah, what does committed mean to you?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, so your husband.
Yes.
So guys, we have 6 minutes. Yeah. So I think we're going to have to do a follow-up.
Okay.
We're going to have to do a follow-up on this, guys.
Let's do a poll, though.
All right, you know what? I've got one more question sorry, guys. I'm going to, let's see. I have a lot of questions. So I have a lot of questions asking, and Rich, you're welcome to jump off. I'm going to do one more question. We're going to end this in 6 minutes. 5 minutes.
I love you, Danielle.
I love you, honey. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye, Rich.
It was interesting. I'll give you that. It was definitely interesting.
So we're gonna do a quick poll again while Danielle asks her last question. So again, smiley face if you think hierarchical polyamory is ethical. Sad face if you think it is not ethical. So.
But if you're joining from my side, I'm launching a poll that asks, can an E&M hierarchical relationship be ethical? Yes or no? And that poll just went live.
Okay. So smiley face if it could be ethical, and sad face if it cannot be ethical ever. So, okay, we'll do that. And so we'll go for that. So yes, go ahead, Danielle. You can ask your question. There's probably 5 minutes left.
So I think the question and I don't want this to come across as I don't want this to get us off topic, but I've had a couple people asking what gives you guys the authority to decide what is ethical and unethical in a hierarchical relationship. And you guys, what gives you guys why do you guys feel like you have the authority and you have the knowledge and experience to be able to decide if it's ethical or not?
All right, Nick.
I would say, again, it's like what gives anybody the authority? We are putting out information that comes from our experience, comes from a lot of readings, a lot of understanding about, how colonization has influenced, how we see hierarchy. And we're just putting out there a lot of discussions about why, from our experience, from our readings, from our research, why we think it's bad. we're not, we take a very hard stance on this. And it sometimes rubs people the wrong way because they're like, what gives you the authority? What gives anybody the authority? What gives anybody the authority? We're here. This is a discussion. This is an exchange of ideas. We're here discussing ideas and we're coming from a place where we've seen secondaries get burnt all the time, the amount of responses we get. And so, yes, so that's, I don't know if you wanted to add something.
Morality is not relative. We started this whole conversation by defining ethics. And ethics, what is ethical, has a near universal definition. And this is the reason we started with that. We started with talking about that it takes into account the well-being of others, that it's about honesty, it's about fairness, it's about respect and responsibility. And these are near universal terms. And we use that in implying that to polyamorous relationships. Do they meet this standard, this near universal definition of ethical? And with that, that's how we approach polyamory. So we're not coming in as people who, came up with this definition. Human beings have been discussing what is ethical for a very long time now. And using this definition that's been part of humanity's discourse, we can then go and talk about what is ethical or not. But we're coming in behind with scholars and humanitarian people who've been having this conversation for a long time. We're not the gatekeepers here.
Yeah. And there's very little time, so I just want to end on a really positive note. I want to thank everybody for joining this discussion and for putting your 2 cents. We've been trying to read everything, but there's been a lot. But I want to
been a lot of comments, yeah,
a lot of comments, and it really opens up the opportunity to probably do this again. I just want to say, Danielle, thank you so much for reaching out to us.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, it's, especially in the age of social media where people become so polarized and so, much into their echo chambers and so set in their ways, you've actually reached out to us and wanted to take the initiative with this discussion. And we are so appreciative because this was such a great discussion, and just meeting you and Rich, even before this call was yes, we definitely feel like this was a really productive conversation. We would love to possibly do it again in the future. I think there's a lot more to say and everything, but so just thank you. It's Danielle, and to your husband, Rich.
Thank you so much. And also,
and on my end, same thing, guys. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Millie, I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just saying that I think this is also great for the community because I haven't seen any people debate hierarchical polyamory, and it's a lot of people have things to say about it. And I think it's important for us to all hear each other. And I think it's beautiful that we can show that we can have a discourse and a dialogue about this. And I think all it does is that it helps everybody polyamorous and helps the community grow. And so I'm so grateful that you reached out to us to debate this, and also it has also something to your character and your braveness and everything. Because I think a lot of people, try to actually debate us and then they pulled out last minute. But you followed through. So I also want to say that's awesome. You're awesome for that.
We made it happen. I think that we've talked about this. We all shared the belief that the polyamorous community and having voices and creators and content and discussion out there is really important. I didn't say this in the beginning, but 13 years ago, there was very, very few resources out there for people who were exploring and starting E&M journeys and exploring polyamory. I am just sharing my story. That's really how I focus my content, is sharing what my husband and I have experienced, what we've gone through, both the lessons learned, the mistakes that I've made. I'm not perfect when it comes to non-monogamy. I do believe that what my husband and I practice is ethical and beautiful. And I think this has been a really interesting experience. So yeah, guys, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much also to all the moderators that have been here. Just really quick. The moderators, you guys have been an awesome contribution to this. We really appreciate it. I know you guys have been here the whole time so much. So thank you guys so much. I'm just going to say this. If you guys have questions for either, and my dog, If anyone here is still here and has questions that you feel like we didn't answer and we weren't able to get to, I have a Q&A on my page on TikTok. I know that Decolonizing loves, so Millie and Nick do as well. So you can probably put in Q&A to them. I think that we're all very responsive with questions and comments. And so please feel free to reach out. And thanks for being here, everybody.
Right.
All
Thank
right.
you all.
All right.
Thank you all.
Bye.